your relationship. The answers to all of your questions about lovemaking, gender identity, orgasm technique, and much more next on Twin Cities Live. Good morning. See, everybody in the audience is really feeling great today, which is amazing because we haven't seen the sun in the Twin Cities for about 5 months now. So it's a great mood today, and we're going to talk about sex. The producer wanted to name this show, How Many Shades of Red Will Bob Turn Before the End of the Hour? And I'm sure many. Dr. Sharon Satterfield is with us, and Sharon, when you talk about sex, I'm sorry, I think most of us, we've had all these books come out. We've had all these experts talk about sexuality, but still, I think we all inside get a little embarrassed when we talk about this subject.
Of course. It's the way we're brought up. We receive so many negative messages about sex from the minute we're born that we can't help that. I grew up in a county in West Virginia where you couldn't have anything about sex in the textbooks in the school. It's probably how I got into the business I'm in. I didn't know anything at all. Couldn't talk about it. Still can't say certain words. And can't talk to my kids about sex half the time. And it's just natural. It's the way that we've been programmed.
What kind of negative signals do we get when we're young that cause us to have problems later on?
Every family teaches their child about sex, although they're not often aware of it. For instance, when my baby was 9 months old, my mother-in-law was visiting and was changing the diaper. And her hand, she was at that age where she was exploring all the different parts of her body, and her hand went down there. And all of a sudden, a big hand clamped on her wrist and went like that. And that was a very definite message to her about that part of her body. So we get all of these sort of negatives. We don't even realize at the time that we're getting them. Even some of the very good information about sex abuse now is kind of scary to children. Or what it does, if you say, this is bad touch, touching you there is bad touch. Well, that's real good when you're 5, but what about when you're 20 and you still think that's bad touch and you want to be in a loving relationship with somebody?
So we get these signals as we grow up, and then we become adults, and then we've got problems.
And we're supposed to change overnight, and it's supposed to all be natural, and it will come from...
Hey, there's nothing to this. I mean, there's supposed to be nothing to it. It's supposed to be natural and supposed to be easy, and why do we make it so complicated?
And sex is like most things. It takes practice. It really does. It doesn't come all that naturally for most people. And we're tongue-tied about it, and we don't communicate about it. And when you, for many people, wish to have a sexual partner when you're having sex, you have to communicate.
Now, what would be maybe the most common problem that you see when it comes to sex right now?
I would say the most common problem in America right now is problems with sexual desire. That people are complaining that they just are too tired or aren't interested, or that one person in a partnership is interested more or less than the other.
What about couples, couples that are in love, deeply in love, and they just don't, the spark's not there.
Yeah.
I mean, when it comes to sex, everything else is great. They love one another, but when it comes to sex, things just don't work.
And that's not that uncommon. We have had countless couples who've never consummated their marriage. Now, if they both want to live without sex, that's okay. But if one of them wants more than the other one, or they feel, well, this isn't right, or I really would like to find out what everybody's talking about, then that's when they come to a sex therapist or counselor.
Do people have different sexual rhythms? I mean, as far as, you know, frequency and that sort of thing? Because, like, maybe the husband once a month is good for him, and maybe the wife 5 times a day is not enough.
Right.
So, I mean, how do you get them together? What am I trying to say here?
Well,
how do you get them going in the right direction?
Right. Probably the most frequent question we get asked is, what is normal? How often should you have sex? And first of all, what is sex? Some people think only intercourse is sex. And generally in our society, men are more genitally focused than women about sex. Women want more cuddling, fondling. although that's changing, fortunately. But there isn't any norm. We have averages, but some people do have intercourse more than once a day, for instance. Other people once a month. And if they're in a partnership and both happy, that's fine.
Is there such thing as a nymphomaniac?
Oh, I hate that word.
No comment.
You notice the male counterpart to that word is not ever mentioned.
Is there a male
Yes.
counterpart?
Well, it's called satyriasis. Basically, that came from the double standard, that women were not supposed to be as interested in sex as men. Now, there is a problem sometimes, particularly with people who've been sexually abused. For some reason, they get into what we call compulsive sexuality, where they're not doing it for their needs, they're doing it for other reasons, often based on anxiety or fear. So sometimes that will cause people to be sexual in a very driven way. And we do get more and more people coming in for treatment of that.
Are there any drugs, I mean, as far as like vitamins or anything that people take to increase their sexuality?
You mean like the eating oysters and that sort of thing?
Right.
Yeah, that's...
I think eating oysters is probably as good as anything, because after...
Does it work?
Well, after you've eaten a raw oyster, you feel so proud of yourself. Your self-esteem is
By
better.
golly, you can accomplish anything.
Yeah, right. Basically, since time immemorial, people have been looking for the perfect aphrodisiac. We don't know of any. There is one drug that is called yohimbine that's supposed to have some of these properties, and now there are some studies being done on it, and the studies aren't all that promising. But basically, it's up here, and a lot of things turn you off about sex. So removing those, Dr. Masters of Masters & Johnson has always said, sex is natural, it should occur, if you don't have all the negatives pushing in. There are some drugs now for men who can't have erections that can be injected directly into the penis to cause an erection. There are some drugs that can be used with people who have specific sexual problems.
What about vitamins specifically that help you as far as that goes?
Is it vitamin E?
Vitamin E is touted as, that study was done in rats, and most studies of sexual
Well, you know, if you
things in
know
rats-
much about rats, they do.
Right. Unfortunately, most things...
They're about second to rabbits, I think.
Right. Unfortunately, most things done in rats sexually don't carry over to humans because there's so much more emotionally that gets in the way. My feeling is if you need vitamins, if you're tired and lethargic and anemic, and you need vitamins for that reason, and that might be interfering with sex, take them. But it's never really been demonstrated that vitamins alone will improve your sex drive.
Impotency, a subject that was not talked about a lot by men for a long, long time, and now has come out a little bit. But are men still very, very hard to get them to open up if they have this problem?
Yes. For instance, it's very hard for us to get anyone who's been in our treatment program to come on television and talk about it. Nobody wants to admit they have a sexual problem. Impotency, or what we call...
Is that especially even more, let's say a woman who has trouble having orgasm, will she admit it more readily than a man who has trouble getting an erection because of that male image, that macho, I guess, to say something?
Sometimes, although I find just among women friends, women don't talk about sex that often. And so I think there's a reluctance for men and women. Erectile dysfunction has many, many causes, some of which are physical. We're now determining that approximately 50% of all cases are physical and can be treated either by curing the physical problem or by a penile implant or by injection with drugs. And it's important that men know this. And also, as men get older, their erections are often not as firm, but that's okay. You can still have intercourse. You need to know that humans are the only animal in the world, except for the spider monkey, I believe, that don't have a bone in their penis. So not getting an erection is quite understandable, particularly under emotional stress, or the other biggie is alcohol. If you drink alcohol, it's very common that it will...
Does not enhance things at all.
No, it's
We
very
will
bad for
continue
erections.
talking sex with Dr. Sharon Satterfield. Now's a good time for you to call and get your questions in from home, and we'll continue with our questions from the audience in just a moment on Twin Cities Live.
Do you want to make more money? Of course, we all do. So find out how easy it is to train at home for a better career. Pick up the phone and call this free number. There's no obligation and no salesman will visit you. Here at International Correspondence Schools, more than 9 million men and women have trained for job promotions and new careers without setting foot inside a classroom. And now at home in your spare time, you can get your diploma or get your degree. Choose any one of these courses: computer programming, high school, auto mechanics, hotel restaurant management, veterinary assistant, drafting, child daycare, bookkeeping, travel, TV VCR repair, medical dental office, electrician. Or get your degree. You can major in business management or in accounting. Call for free information on any one of these courses. Then decide if you want to train at home for a better career, to make more money or advance in your present job. Call 1-800-247-3600. Operators are on duty to send you free information by return mail. Call now, 1-800-247-3600.
Hey, Mom, what's for dinner? What would you like?
Something special.
Vandecamp's frozen fish.
Something different. Correction, very different.
They taste fresh because they're frozen fresh. And they're dipped in crispy golden breadcrumbs or fresh egg batter for a taste your family will love.
Remember, Mom likes something fast. No problem there, Mom.
Vandecamp's, the freshest ideas in frozen fish.
Globe College of Business.
I'm a legal secretary at a law firm called Rutenberg, Griswold, Oren & Associates.
Yeah, more possibilities.
Globe gave me the skills to apply towards the job that I'm doing now. My idea of success is finishing my courses here at Globe, being ready to go out into the business world.
Globe College of Business. Turn your world around. Call 224-4378.
This is a hot local topic right now. You heard about the group, went into the local stores, pulled all the war toys off the shelves because they thought it was bad for us, bad for our children. This past Friday, those same people protesting against war and against military madness protested our own Minnesota National Guard's participation in a mission down in Central America. Now, these are women with a mission, and they go by the name Women Against Military Madness. Now, be in our studio audience Friday when speak out on the issues that could affect all of us, affect our lives, our children. Should we enforce a ban on nuclear testings? Do characters like Rambo perpetuate violent play among our children? We're going to talk about this with Women Against Military Madness. The number to call for tickets is 641-1298 to reserve your free tickets to Friday's Twin Cities Live. We're back talking with Dr. Sharon Satterfield from the University of Minnesota about sex, and we have some questions here that we got from our audience, in case they may have been a little embarrassed, as sometimes we all get in asking some questions. And the first question I have on the top is it true that masturbation helps marital sex problems?
Well, it depends on how you feel about masturbation, but if you feel that it's okay, it is considered normal. And many of the techniques that we use to treat people with sexual problems or to enhance sexuality do involve masturbation. So we think that the more times that you are sexual, whether it's with yourself or other people, the better. And studies show that people who have happy sex lives well into their older years are people who've been more active when they're young.
Good morning. Thank you for calling. Go ahead. You're on Twin Cities Live.
Hi. Yeah, I'd like to talk to Dr. Satterfield, and I have a problem. I was sexually abused as a child and also in my first marriage, and I'm in a relationship now where my boyfriend, when he wants sex, he wants it more than I do, and it fears me because of being abused again, and it destroyed 2 other relationships because I'm afraid of sex sometimes. What can I do? It's really fearful for me because of the abuse I had when I was growing up and also in my first marriage.
This is a very common problem. In fact, we first learned a lot about sexual abuse from women coming in with desire problems, sexual dysfunction, and they weren't treated very well by our traditional techniques. Mm-hmm. You have to first deal with the abuse issue, and there are several treatment programs in the Twin Cities that do this. Our program, our post-abuse recovery group, is a co-ed group, so you can actually deal with men with these problems who've been abused themselves, and that seems to help to deal with the issue with men. Mm-hmm. But you have to get over the abuse first. then become more comfortable with yourself as a sexual person, whether that be through a women's group or through counseling with your partner, because there are real reasons that you're probably aversive to sex, and that's understandable. You have those past experiences that were very bad, and you're going to probably have flashbacks or think about that, and it's going to affect your sexual life now. But there are programs set up to treat that. And they're not long. Our program runs 12 weeks.
So she could get in contact with your program at the University
Yes.
of Minnesota? Okay. Another question that we had that was from the audience. Does having children affect your sex life beyond the fact that it's a good idea to put a deadbolt lock on your bedroom door?
The trouble with young children is it's hard to put a deadbolt lock because they do get up and need you in the middle of the night. And what we find is that many couples trace the doldrums of their sex life back to when they had young children. Another study done at the nursing school of the University of Maryland this year by Dr. Fishman showed that couples, particularly women, really have a year at least after having a baby where they're feeling very overwhelmed. So it definitely does. There are some physiological changes that occur after childbirth also, that your body isn't responding the way it used to. And it's important to know that. Your vagina may be dry. If you're lactating in particular, you'll have some of these changes, and you won't have the desire that you had for a while. And you need to know that that's normal.
Thank you for holding on. Thank you for holding on the line. Go right ahead. You're talking with Dr. Sharon Satterfield.
Yes,
sex.
I wanted to ask about multi-orgasms. When partners are doing it together and they keep having multi-orgasm, is that harmful to your body? I mean, like, sometimes, this is kind of embarrassing.
It's good exercise.
It's good exercise.
Well, I do diet a lot, and so like I can lose a pound by the next day just from that extra. I do my own exercises plus that. I can lose 2 pounds from exercising plus a pound from that. But
well, somebody actually calculated the calories.
I've done it 19 times in a row.
How do you keep count?
It's oral. It's oral.
Oh.
And
Wait a minute, you had 19 orgasms in a row?
Yes, that's the most we've counted. And it's
Did you require medical assistance after you were...
There is one thing now. I can feel my bladder sometimes releasing a little bit of urine through the pressure of all this, through the strain. And also I can feel sometimes like my head gets light, which is good as long as it should, but... what I'm worried about is my physical health. Now, is this going to hurt me?
Right.
Let Sharon answer this.
Basically, multiple orgasms, particularly for women, are considered normal. And we're now finding that men, either with some medications or as they get older, are experiencing multiple orgasms without ejaculating. Most of them are thrilled by this. There is a point, it is exercise, and there is a point where the physiological changes, because they're involving the autonomic nervous system, which affects your heart rate and your blood flow. If you have too many in a row, you will possibly feel lightheaded. But basically, the muscle tension and relaxation, the blood flow increase to your pelvis is generally good for your body. And it keeps those muscles that do control your bladder functioning working, and it's very good to exercise those muscles. In fact, when you have problems with urine release, that's usually the kind of exercise that they have you do, using those muscles.
You mentioned multiple orgasms for men as they get older. That can happen. So what about age and sex as we get...
We're finding that men...
Do you have anything to look forward to?
Oh, yes, especially for men. Things get better.
Boy, I'll tell you, this is good news.
Now, we've known for a long time that women get better with age, and that women's peak sexually is often 35 to 40, and there's no reason that it needs to decline after that. The problem for men is that sometimes their erection isn't as firm, particularly around age 55. Some men notice this. But men, as they get older, have more control over the timing of their ejaculations. They have much more just control in terms of they're usually communicating better with their partner. They're not feeling as necessary to do it fast. They're learning more about themselves. They're often capable of intimacy, whereas when they were younger, they may not have been. So they find they enjoy sex much more. The only problem is that sometimes if you actually have a physical reason that you can't have an erection, sometimes that needs to be treated.
Another card from our audience. Being single, are there any pre-marriage signs of compatibility to look for?
I think it's very important to look not just for the emotional compatibility, which is often based on how well you communicate, but to look for sexual signs of compatibility. Too many of our couples have come in saying, well, we thought it was important to wait and not have intercourse before marriage. Well, I don't necessarily think that's a bad value. If you feel that way, though, there are lots of other ways you can relate physically before you're married to find out if you do have a basic sex drive. You can talk, and talking and communicating around sex is very, very important. Most people nowadays feel they have to actually try it before marriage, and I don't want to get into whether that's good or bad. I think that's an individual decision. But we do find that this thing, if you wait too long, now that we're waiting so long to marry, if someone does wait until they're 30 and is not active sexually, they have a lot of trouble getting started if they wait too long.
Do people in general feel that to see a sex therapist is a last resort, and even though this therapist may provide help, do they still feel that in the long run it would be better to approach their problem without outside help? Is it hard for people to finally go to a sex therapist? And I've always wondered in my mind, what in the world goes on in sex therapy?
Well, at the University of Minnesota, I can tell you what doesn't go on. There is no sex going on in our office. You do not come and look for someone to be sexual with you. We don't do surrogate therapy, for instance. In fact, it may be illegal in the state of Minnesota because of some new laws that have been passed. What we do, and it's hard. Being a physician, it's hard for me. If you came in with a broken leg, I would look at it, I would touch it, I would x-ray it. You bring your sexual problem to me, I can't do those things. So you have to communicate to me what is wrong, and then I have to communicate back to you, or actually my staff. We have a very large staff of sex therapists, what to do about it. And it is essentially talking. Now, we also do a lot of group therapy, and this really enhances the process because you learn that you're not the only one with this problem, that it's quite common.
What do you mean by group therapy? Do you get a group?
You put couples and groups together, and they learn from each other.
That's got to be hard to sit in front of strangers and talk about your problems in the bedroom.
At first it is, but they get so much from it. They really do.
How do you bring your partner out in the open who's had bad experiences in the past?
Well, as I mentioned to the woman on the phone, I think that if they've been very traumatic experiences, sometimes you need to deal therapeutically with those first. Some people just need to have post-traumatic stress therapy before they can deal with the sexual problem. The other way to do it is be very gentle. Now, most sex therapy techniques are based on going back to infancy and learning to touch all over again, to learn to touch as pleasure, and not focus on genital touch. We say, don't have intercourse and don't touch around the genitals or the breasts until we tell you it's time. So we do it in a very non-threatening way. And that's what couples can do with each other, too. And to communicate and let the partner tell you when it's time. Let the partner be in control.
Good morning. You're on Twin Cities Live. Go right ahead.
Good morning, Bob.
Good morning.
My question is directed to the doctor. I'm kind of stuttering and stammering here. I'm blushing along with you here.
That's all right. If I didn't have makeup on, boy, this face would be so red. You don't know.
Well, thanks a lot. My question is, being a young man of 23, I'm feeling somewhat insecure about my physical stature, genitally. And I'm real lucky that my wife accepts me for what I am, but the problem is I don't accept myself for what I am. And I'm wondering, what could I do to help accept myself for what I am?
Well, I think, first of all, is to understand that you're normal. One of the big myths in our society is that you judge men by the size of their equipment. And
we can say penis on this show.
Okay.
I mean,
well, one of the things we know about penises is that the size when it's not erect means nothing in terms of the size when it is erect. Also, the size when it is erect, the diameter is often more important than the length. And even small penises can give lots of pleasure. So this issue of size technically is really silly. but it's become a big myth in our society, and it's important to deal with. One of the ways, if you really can't get over it yourself, even though you know those things, there are men's groups, and there are men's sexuality groups. For instance, we have a men's sexuality group, and that's a very common question that comes up.
When it comes to female sexuality, what is the biggest myth?
Well, there are lots of them. Women feel very guilty. We are told at the time in our lives during adolescence, unfortunately, is the time when we have our great sex drive, and men and women too, and yet it's squashed. Now, I'm not saying it's bad to squash that, because I don't believe in adolescents being highly sexually active at all. But I think it's very dangerous in terms of our future sexual functioning not to allow us to even think or talk or engage in self-pleasuring during those times when physically we're really needing to. And for women, the biggest problem seems to be their feelings about their body, that they've grown up being told that you don't, from here to there, you don't give it names, you don't talk about it, and it's disgusting and dirty. So that seems to be the biggest problem, just that whole aversion to that part of the body.
When we come back, I've got to ask this question. When is it healthy to say no in a marriage? We'll ask that when we come back on Twin Cities Live.
Weight Watchers' new Quick Start Plus program has a surprise for you. Our new weight loss program offers even more choices, more freedom. There's just one catch. You may have to buy yourself a new wardrobe.
Get out of those big old clothes. Start this year out right by losing weight and looking great with Weight Watchers' new improved Quick Start Plus. You'll feel healthier and happier. So join now for only $10. Call Weight Watchers today.
Here, I want to show you something. Come on, it's about your furniture. Here's a typical chair, the way it looks before Park begins custom fitting your new upholstery. See this piece of webbing? It should be replaced, so Park does it. These springs, Park automatically reties them. At Park, we take pride in what we do, so you'll be proud of what you get. Call now during our famous 20% off sale, and you can recover any sofa or 2 chairs starting at just $183 complete.
Who offers savings from 25 to 50% every day? Who has thousands of coats, suits, and sportswear to choose from? And who has the latest fall and winter looks from a host of top designers? The Coat Company has. It's the only place in the city where you can find the selection, the quality, and above all, the value. So now's the best time to coat yourself at the Coat Company and save 25 to 50%. The Coat Company. Selection, quality, and value.
Globe College of Business.
Being at Globe has changed my life quite a bit. I had been a homemaker previously, and getting out into the world, the business world particularly, and learning the ins and outs, and getting along with people, it's built my self-confidence. I've learned a lot about relationships with others.
Globe College of Business. Turn your world around. Call 224-4378.
Every divorce is painful, but imagine going through a lengthy divorce and losing custody of your children. Then suddenly your visitation rights are just pulled away from you because your ex-spouse suddenly accuses you of sexually molesting your own children. Now, of course, you claim that you did not abuse your children, but the courts find in favor of your former spouse. They say otherwise. Now, where can you go? On Monday's Twin Cities Live, you'll meet 4 fathers who say they were falsely accused by their estranged wives. They say their wives wanted to get back at them, and this is how they did it. They told these lies. Call 641-1298 and reserve your free seat and your place here in our studio to voice your opinion Monday morning when alleged victims of child abuse laws speak out. Welcome back. We're talking to Dr. Sharon Satterfield from the University of Minnesota. When it comes to sex, and this is, I didn't make this up, when is it healthy to say no in a marriage? Honey, I have a headache. No.
If you really feel like saying no, you should say no. If you say no all the time, then it gets to be a problem. And this is why this issue of communication is so important. Couples really need to be able to communicate about sex. And also there are ways of saying no. You say no because, and explain why you're saying no.
Is it still very common for a woman, and maybe this is very sexist of me to say this, but for a woman to use sex as a tool to gain power or to gain control of a situation, or as a weapon sometimes against their partner? I guess it can go both ways.
Yeah, it really does go both ways. It's not just women that do that. We do see in some of the more severe marital problems we see, and we see many severe marital problems involving sex. So much of what we do is marital therapy. And manipulation around sex, unfortunately, it's like other power plays. It's a good thing to fight over.
Good morning, you're on Twin Cities Live. Go right ahead.
Yes, Dr. Satterfield?
Yes.
I'm a little nervous calling. What I wanted to find out or ask you about is I started a relationship about a year and a half ago, and the first 3 months of the relationship were really good. We had sex frequently, and at the time he was living with some people, and so was I. And it seemed like the moment we moved in together, the sex stopped. It became less and less frequent, and every time I'd bring it up and talk to him about it, he felt that his past relationships were based on sex, and when the sex got, quote-unquote, old, the relationship broke up, and he didn't want that to happen with us. At first, I accepted that, and now I'm starting to feel kind of unwanted. It's gone from 2 or 3 times a day down to, like, once a month, and even then, I bring it up at those times, and he gets quite upset because I ask, as he says so often. I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain. But I can't understand why it went from so frequent to, hardly ever wanting it anymore.
Yeah.
Is it moving in together?
I can understand why you feel hurt, because that's an issue of rejection. And it would be nice if you could talk more about it. It's not an uncommon problem. I would say that it's very common that we see sexual problems developing with moving in with each other, with marriage. Now, some people have an individual problem, and it's not the first time this has happened to them. Other people have this problem as a couple, and they just can't seem to work it out by themselves. And that's sort of when you go to someone else to help you. And all I can say is this is very common. It's often based on our past ideas about sex and what sex means to us. And the other issue is one of variety. Many couples in America, if you go around and question them, normal married couples will complain that their sex life has really gotten into the doldrums. And the people who tell us they have really happy sex lives into old age are those who try something new. They pretend they're not married and they're meeting at a party for the first time. They go off for a weekend together. And you don't have to have a lot of money to do these things, but to use variety.
Well, in the past, I had good sexual relationships, and I've tried everything that I know. He even made a comment that maybe if I went out of town, the absence would make the heart grow fonder, and even that didn't work.
Right. I think that's the point where you probably need to go to a sex therapist.
But how do you bring it up, especially when it makes him feel so uncomfortable?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, that's tough. And my personal feeling is that many clinics won't treat you individually. Because they say this is a couple problem. I feel some people need to start out on their own and just to get their self-confidence back. So what we often find is that one person comes in, and as therapy progresses, maybe the partner feels more comfortable when they learn that we're not doing awful things there.
You mentioned that couples complain, a lot of married couples complain that, our sex life is getting boring. It is a fact in this country that with the advent of video cassette recorders, that millions upon millions of normal, everyday married people are renting X-rated movies.
Yes.
Is this something that is beneficial to?
Yes, these movies are being used for marital enrichment. There are a lot of things I don't like about these movies, but basically we find that many couples have actually used them for therapy even. That basically most of us, after a hard day of work, in a society that gives you constant negative messages about sex or sells sex as very commercial, you need some stimulation. We're often tired, you know, especially when you have children. You end up waiting until the end of the day after everything else to have sex. And often we need a little stimulation to get us going again. The problem is that when we've gone to groups, men's groups, for instance, they'll tell us, well, my wife doesn't like this, so I go to a prostitute for that. And unfortunately, that's much more common than I would hope to see.
What do you do if you have a partner and you want to stretch your sexual horizons and your partner is very comfortable with where they're at and they don't want to try a different method or technique or whatever?
Well, those are the people we see in our clinic, and they're the ones that have differences, either about their compatibility or their interests. And what we try to do is get them both to a level where they're both comfortable together. We really don't endorse most couples looking elsewhere or trying, particularly nowadays with all the sexual diseases that we have floating around. We feel that most of these problems need to involve a certain degree of intimacy, a certain degree of communication, and a certain relationship to put it in, to really work them out.
You touched on it. We're going to talk about it later, but might as well get into it right now. The subject of AIDS and how that is going to affect sex in America. In talking with people before the show, somewhere it was written that AIDS will have as dramatic an effect on sex in America as the pill did when it first came out.
Sure. What people need to realize is we had a very short time when we really had the freedom to be sexually active. Penicillin was discovered in the early 40s. It wasn't really available until probably after the Korean War. And so until then, syphilis was the problem that AIDS is. You died from it. Al Capone died from it. You became insane from it. So syphilis was considered almost as bad or as bad as AIDS. So we always had one of those big, bad diseases to scare people. We also didn't have the birth control that we have today. So women always had to worry about getting pregnant. So this kind of period of openness around sex has been relatively brief in terms of the time it was safe to have multiple sexual partners or to have one partner after another.
So the sexual revolution was definitely more the exception than the rule.
Yes, most of our whole society, our Western civilization, has had, in fact, syphilis used to be a much more virulent disease than it is now. It used to really kill people quite quickly.
We'll continue with Twin Cities Live in just a moment. We'll be right back.
Every winter day, a ritual takes place in homes, bundling up kids to go outside. But no amount of bundling can stop the cold completely. That's why there's Malt-O-Meal hot cereal, double flavored with wheat and malt to taste great and help keep kids warm on the inside.
I think I need some more Malt-O-Meal.
Bundle up on the inside with Malt-O-Meal hot cereal.
The stars, what secrets do they hold for you? Love, success, wealth? Now, Jean Dixon charts your horoscope and guides you through the day with her new daily action guide. Let Jean help you make the right decision at the right time 3 times a day. Call 976-3333. Don't have a touch-tone phone? You can still get your daily horoscope. Reach for the stars. Call Jean Dixon's horoscope and daily action guide now. 976-3333. Only 95 cents per call.
Begin an exciting career in the allied health field at the Medical Institute of Minnesota. Choose from 4 programs: medical assistant, dental assisting, medical laboratory technician, or veterinary technician. MIM offers short-term specialized training in your chosen field. Lab work is emphasized, followed by actual clinical experience. Picture yourself in a hospital lab, doctor's, dentist's, or veterinarian's office. Call 1-800-331-2000 for our free booklet. The Medical Institute of Minnesota, 1-800-331-2000.
She acts, she talks. She's Oprah Winfrey, and now she walks off the pages of this
week's People. People celebrates People. Oprah's made the world her stage, and People lets you in on why this talk star gets everyone's ear. Then discover why wild rocker Billy Idol is just a teddy bear in leather. Next, meet Little Shop of Horror's Ellen Green off-screen, the movie's sexiest plant lady, and so much more. Week after week, People celebrates People. This week, TV's best talker talks it up.
Welcome back to Twin Cities Live. We're talking with Dr. Sharon Satterfield from the University of Minnesota about sex. And when it comes to sex therapy, have you treated lesbian and gay couples? And if so, how is their therapy different than for a heterosexual couple?
No, not very different. The only difference is that we usually don't have as many of them, so we don't tend to do it in groups as often. But basically, the problems are the same. They often involve a relationship problem, or at least by the time people come to us, it's become a relationship problem. They usually involve some sexual issue, and we use the same techniques to treat them.
Why are some of us homosexual, and why are some of us heterosexual?
Well, nobody knows yet, but there are a lot of theories. We think that there is no one cause of homosexuality. That's just the way people are, and we really are finding more and more that they may be born that way. One study recently showed that there was a biological marker for homosexuality, but that study's now been refuted by another study. So this is all really up in the air.
How can you tell if the balance in a relationship is more towards the sexual than towards the mental compatibility? And what can you do about that?
Well, you talk about it. Basically, in our society, for some reason, men tend to be more interested in the sexual part and women in the other kind of the fondling, the nurturing, the other parts. And this is just a basic difference. One of the magazines, I think it was Cosmopolitan, had a wonderful article a few months ago just saying, hey, there really are these differences between men and women. Let's face it. And I think that's important, to just accept that there are some real differences there, and that's all the more reason you need to talk about it. Now, what you can do is you can have it both ways. You can increase your interest in sex, and he can increase his interest in the other things, or vice versa.
Good morning. You're on Twin Cities Live. Go right ahead.
Yes, my question is for Dr. Satterfield.
Sure, go ahead.
First off, I want to say my husband and I are very much in love and completely faithful to each other. But after the birth of our children, I guess we found our sexual life not as exciting as before. And he talked me into trying oral sex. As a result, I did not realize he had a cold sore on his lip, and I have type 1 genital herpes. First off, I'm furious with the social stigma that is attached to this, and I'm having a hard time dealing with it. I can't help, in some ways, but blaming my husband, and I know that's not right either. And in some ways, I think God is just getting me for doing something that was wrong. What can I do?
Well, that may be something that you really need counseling for. There are some herpes support groups in the Twin Cities, and I would encourage you to get involved with one of those. We're now finding that herpes is, first of all, very common. Most of us have it sometimes had a herpes infection. About half of the people just become immune to it. Often people, as they go on longer, become immune to it. Or at least get the eruptions less frequently. We now have an oral drug that helps. So I think it's important to talk to your physician about this, but also you can go to a herpes support group, and you may need to deal with this issue with your husband in counseling, since you do have those feelings toward him. And those feelings can be dealt with, and that's a kind of normal thing that would come into a sex therapy clinic. The other issue that came up in the other phone call is, what if he's reluctant to come and I want to? And I think I need to address that. People need to set priorities on things. And if this is important to you, let your partner know how important it is. For instance, some people call and say, well, my insurance doesn't want to cover it, so I don't think I'll come. And what I say is, how important is this to you? You take out a loan to buy a car. Is your sex life that important to you? And if the answer is yes, then go get help.
You mentioned we've always had a dreaded disease to frighten us, syphilis, and herpes was the big disease and was all over television and in newspapers and in magazines. And then all of a sudden it just kind of got swept under the... Herpes suddenly disappeared from the public consciousness. Suddenly it was AIDS.
Right. Herpes is still a troublesome disease, just as cold sores have always been troublesome. And I think, unfortunately, the big deal that was made of herpes is what's making this woman feel so bad about it. Herpes has always been around, at least oral herpes. It became a problem when we started transmitting oral herpes to the genital area or genital herpes to the genital area. It was becoming more of an epidemic problem. But we're now learning that, particularly with the advent of the new drug, acyclovir, and with the fact that some people over time do develop more immunity to the herpes virus, that it is certainly controllable, and it's emotionally controllable. That's what's important to realize, that you can get to the point you can accept it.
And we'll continue in just a moment. We'll be right back.
Nothing could be finer than the taste of Aunt Jemima in the morning. How about Aunt Jemima fixes you up with something toasty instead? New Aunt Jemima pancakes sound good? Then get your toaster. That's right, Aunt Jemima spent a lot of time sifting and whisking to make pancakes so good you wouldn't believe they came out of a toaster. Nothing could be finer than the taste of Aunt Jemima in the morning.
Globe College of Business.
I'm a legal secretary at a law firm called Rutenberg, Griswold, Oren & Associates. Yeah, more possibilities. Globe gave me the skills to apply towards the job that I'm doing now.
My idea of success is finishing my courses here at Globe, being ready to go out into the business world.
Globe College of Business. Turn your world around. Call 224-4378.
Years ago, mothers who cared gave their children the one laxative specially made gentle for children, Fletcher's Castoria. And today, mothers who care still prefer natural, good-tasting Fletcher's Castoria.
When you hurt, turn on the heat. There's no beating deep heating. For soothing warmth, penetrating relief of minor arthritis, pain, and stiffness, turn on the heat. Mentholatum Deep Heating Rub. There's no beating deep heating.
If you care about what you cook, we care about what you cook with. Sargento of Wisconsin.
Out of more than 4,000 physicians in the Twin Cities, how do you pick just one? Call 874-4444 for Medformation.
The John Bear Grease Race, exclusive live reports on Eyewitness News.
Nearly 9 million American women visit their doctors each year because of cystitis. It is believed that many more have the disease but don't know it. Certain foods, drink, back problems, even lovemaking can affect this syndrome. Tuesday on Twin Cities Live, find out how you can avoid cystitis and what you can do if you get it. 641-1298 is the number to call for free tickets. A groundbreaking woman doctor who is making medical history with her treatment for this disease will shed light on aspects that are often unknown to those who suffer from it. Call 641-1298 to reserve your seats for next Tuesday's show and find out about cystitis. Good morning. Thank you for holding on the line. I know sometimes we keep our callers on the line forever, but now's your opportunity. Go right ahead.
Yes, I'd like to ask Dr. Sutherland about if the hormones released in your woman's cycle, I'm kind of nervous, has to deal with the drive, sexual drive. I noticed since I had my 3 children that I have more problems with PMS type thing, and once I have my period, say 3 days later, then it doesn't seem, seem to have my sexual drive back. I was wondering if this is something that's common.
Sure.
Yes, I spent some time in Scotland studying PMS, and what we found when we gave women diaries to fill out on a daily basis was they did report hormonal cycle differences in sexual desire. Not all women, but particularly if you have a PMS syndrome, it is likely that that occurs. And the thing to do is to make the most of it, or find special things that turn you on and use them during that time, and communicate better with your partner about it. But yes, the other thing is after menopause, some women experience differences. Some women, for the first time, feel free to be sexual because they don't have to worry about childbirth, and they get more turned on. Other women have a loss of sexual desire.
What is the importance of, like, fantasy within a good marriage as far as good sex is concerned?
Fantasy and you need that?
Oh, I think it's real important. The difference, though, is that as you get older, for instance, in the male, fantasy may not give you that erection that it gave you when you're younger. You may need more direct manual stimulation to turn on. And we're not sure of all the reasons why, but probably having to do just with the aging nerves and blood vessels. But fantasy is very important, and a lot of people feel very guilty about their fantasies. There are very few fantasies that are abnormal or considered abnormal, particularly if you don't act on all your fantasies, if you think they might hurt somebody.
You commented earlier that you think men talk about sex more easily than women. Why do you think that's so? I don't know. I feel differently. I think it's kind of even between the two, and I'm just curious, why do you think that it's so?
Really don't know, and I think that would be a very interesting study, just to take large groups of people at different socioeconomic levels and educational levels. Education is a big factor in determining the way people act sexually. And to just find this out, I think in our society it's more acceptable for men to sit around in public and talk about sex, or in the locker room you're supposed to talk about sex.
But are women more honest? Do you think women are more honest and talk more realistically about sex than men do?
Yeah, see, I think that women, well, this is a stereotype, definitely, because people think that women gossip more. And I think that that women talk just as frequently among themselves, maybe more so. Is that what you're saying? More among themselves?
Yes, not as publicly. And also there's an age difference. Younger women seem to be talking more about sex than older women. Women in their 50s, at least, often report to us that they still have a lot of trouble talking about sex. Even though they know they should, or that it's important, they have trouble.
Sharon, I'd like to direct a question back to one of the callers about the lady that was sexually active, and then all of a sudden she said it just seemed to kind of disappear or whatever. There's a lot of married men out there that are sexually active with males also. And how do you determine, or how do you find out if there's a sexual problem with just him inside of the marriage with the two of you, or if he's sexually active on the outside? What are some of the signs that you can look for?
Yeah, we do an incredibly thorough sexual history to find all of these things, because there's so many different causes of these problems. And if you're wondering about your partner, for instance, I think just over time becoming aware of the different things that can cause sexual problems, like whether it's another partner, and just gently discussing them over time. And it's important to feel that you can trust your partner.
And we will continue with Dr. Sharon Satterfield right after this.
Ma, we didn't invite you here to clean the kitchen.
I don't mind.
At least take another paper towel. We've been using that one for half an hour.
It's perfectly fine.
Ma, it's disposable.
But it's still good.
Bolt is so strong and so sturdy that in tests, it actually stood up to a washing machine. Here's Scott towels. Here's Bounty. And here's Bolt.
Drop it, Ma.
It's still good.
Drop it.
It's still good.
Drop it.
Bolt, the super strong and sturdy paper towel.
I am making the fastest chicken nuggets in the entire planet. The fastest.
People can't believe how fast new microwave Hot Bites are.
Hot Bites! Look at them! Look how tasty and delicious, and in only 2 minutes,
6 nuggets with sauce in 2 minutes. All tender, juicy breast meat.
You know, with these chicken nuggets, I never have to leave the house. I think I never will leave the house. You know, I think I might lock myself in the house all day.
New microwave Hot Bites from Banquet.
Wait a second, this isn't my house. I'm in someone else's house. Get me out of here!
Globe College of Business.
Being at Globe has changed my life quite a bit. I had been a homemaker previously, and getting out into the world, the business world particularly, and learning the ins and outs, and getting along with people, it's built my self-confidence. I've learned a lot about relationships with others.
Globe College of Business. Turn your world around. Call 224-4378.
This time, this place has done a lot for me. The kind of thing happens when the beauty of a place overwhelms you. Things seem different, more positive. I'll be going home in a few days. But I'll be back.
Come back to yourself.
If you'd like to get in touch with Dr. Satterfield, you can write the program in Human Sexuality, University of Minnesota, 2630 University Avenue Southeast, Minneapolis, Minnesota, 55414. You can write our letters, or you can call 376-7520, 376-7520, but you've got some problems with your phones or something?
Our phones are being changed right now, so if people experience some problems, they should keep trying or send a note. We have an intake person that takes all new patients and explains how the system works, what insurance covers and what it doesn't, and they should just keep trying until they get her.
Okay, and of course, if
and she will call them back, too, if they can leave a message.
And if you didn't get a chance to write that address down that quickly, you can call City Line at 645-6060, and you can get that address. So you can use insurance for sex therapy?
Many insurances will cover, it depends. It depends what your symptoms are, what your insurance policy says, but basically if you have mental health coverage, it may cover it.
Hotel accommodations and dining provided by the Radisson University Hotel, 615 Washington Avenue Southeast on the University of Minnesota East Bank campus. Limousine service for the guest of Twin Cities Live, provided by Henderson Chauffeured Cadillacs. Bob Bruce's wardrobe is provided by Justers. Hair and makeup provided by Take 5, 504 North 1st Avenue in the Butler Building.
I want to thank Dr. Satterfield for being with us today. I know I learned a lot.
I have a question. Throughout the whole program, you've been saying, you know, the communication is the best. Do you think it's important for us to become more comfortable with speaking about sex to, you know, especially to our partner, I suppose?
Oh, absolutely. A big part of our program is to deal with sexual attitudes, just to become comfortable with sex, our sexual attitude awareness program. And if you can't talk about sex, most couples will run into problems somewhere.
I'm curious.
Thanks a lot, John.
Thank you, Karen.